Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our next episode, which will be beginning to cover something that I find to be super, super interesting, life after death. Today, the topic will actually cover 16 different religious beliefs in the world today, which, as I said in the last episode, there are over 4,000 active religions in the world today. So, that's super interesting. But unfortunately, we do not have time, nor do I really have the interest to know about them all. I mean, in some ways I do, but it just seems a little overwhelming. So, today we're just going to cover 16. Just a few different varied religions. A couple of them, I think, at least one, I was like, whoa. Thought it was somewhat, perhaps comical. So let's start. Okay, so spirituality and religion. I just wanted to kind of go over the differences. Basically, spirituality is similar to religion. It really has a lot of the same premise. It really does, have a lot of the same goals, I think, which is like connecting to the higher power, formatting a level of belief that you can live your life by. But I think the difference is that like the dogmatic traditions in religion, wherein there's a book or a religious leader that tells you what to do and how to live according to the religious premise. And when you're spiritual, you sort of have this direct communication with the divine, and you don't really need or want all of that dogma. Instead, you just kind of follow your heart, right? So things that may be considered spiritual, like Satanism, that's actually a religion. It's not spiritual. So, and there is no direct connection between like the worship of negative entities and spirituality, which I think some religions, imply. So I don't have any issues with religion at all. Although I'm not religious, I am spiritual. I feel as though if it helps you, if you believe in it, if it resonates in your heart, and it helps you live a life that makes you happy and be a good person to, the other people, animals, and to the earth itself, more power to it. I'm all about it. So let's go. Christianity. Almost 1 in every 3 people in the world is a Christian. Christianity is a religion that is far more prevalent than any other on the planet. So if we're looking at like how many years people have been on earth and believing in higher powers and forming religions, the 2,000 years since Christ, or the 2022 years since Christ lived, is quite a short period of time. So it's like wildfire. So most people are very adept because of that, as far as what the Christian belief system entails. But we'll just go over it pretty quickly. So something that I didn't really understand, as to like, because I was raised Catholic, and maybe it was just some part where I was zoning out, during Sunday school or whatever, but I didn't really realize that the reason that people do not believe, or that Christians do not really believe in reincarnation, because that will be a topic for tomorrow, is that because then it kind of cheats them out of that eternal life with God and the Father, or God the Father and His Son Jesus. So I find that to be interesting. So if an individual is born again, when he or she dies, he or she will enter an eternal rest called heaven, a place where there will be never any pain, crying, or mourning. So, I kind of feel like this is, something that they're talking about as a living thing, like not born again as in resurrection, as in being born another lifetime on this earth, but more so in reference to the Christ's resurrection, and that we are all born into sin, and through baptism, and depending on your religious sect of Christianity or branch of Christianity. I know, in Catholicism, you do your first communion and then you do confirmation. So I really do feel like, it is referring more to that choice to be born in your heart as a Christian that will earn you your place in heaven. So I guess that is the reference of, people can on their deathbeds repent and, take Jesus into their hearts and still be welcomed into heaven despite whatever they have made done in their sins, because Jesus has already died for those. So if you do not do that, then you will be in the brimstone and fire, lake of burning fire and brimstone, as an eternal punishment for rebelling against God. So, it's a little bit, it's pretty intense, so I just really feel like we all do understand the heaven and hell concepts that come from Christianity and how we can arrive at either place. So with Judaism, it seems to be elusive. The research I did, now I am not Jewish and I don't have any direct, information or direct experience with Judaism, but I thought it was just worth bringing up because it is another, very large and long-standing religious practice. So they do believe, okay, so there's some, I'm just going to go over some of the beliefs that of the afterlife. Now I apologize to anybody if any of this is off or not true, but in the research I did, this is what I found, that they believe that there is an afterlife. They text from every era in Jewish life, so there is different sects of Judaism as well, different branches, different that do slightly differ from each other. So that also creates even greater depends, I guess. So they do believe that when you die, there is both an underworld as well as heaven or in the skies. So it also saying heaven is not a gated community. It has an open door policy. The righteous of any people and any faith have a place there. Now, these are the ones I really enjoy. Now, there's another one later that we'll talk about wherein they don't think anybody's wrong. I mean, if you have a belief in some deity, some higher power, and I really dig that too, that you end up being, not chastised for not being one or the other, but just having something. So we'll talk about that a little later. So our actions, not specific beliefs, determine the fate of our souls. No concept of hell really exists. There is that, like I said, the underworld. There is an underworld, but I think that's just basically where the spiritual, existence, or where you go as a soul, including heaven. But the closest they get is the fate of someone who renounces God or faith at large in the world and morality in the world. They will be then cut off from all of that which they've known and their family and their kin in the afterlife. The afterlife can take many forms. Jewish beliefs in the afterlife are very diverse. So there is the ranging from believing that or expecting the unity of flesh and spirit in a resurrected body, all the way to that we live on in our children and grandchildren, which is in a sense heaven. And so, the afterlife is here on earth. There's one aspect of Judaism thought to see heaven as a transitory place where souls reside after death. They reside there until they reunite with their physical bodies at the time when the Messiah comes. This approach differs from reincarnation because the return to life only happens in the Messianic era, not as just a constant occurrence similar to Hinduism. And they also, like I said earlier, they believe that we live on through others. It's expressed in one of the prayer books as a metaphor of a leaf in a tree. The leaf drops to the ground, but it nourishes the soil so more plants and trees can spring up. So we nourish the future through the influence we have on those who follow us. And it can happen in many, many innumerable and unimaginable ways. So I really like that. It's sort of like a legacy. So that's really discussing, the human legacy and the butterfly effect. Like, just because we can't be here forever, technically, like in a physical body, doesn't mean we're not like here forever in some way, right? So we experience this in many ways of people, inventors, people, historical people who really made a difference on planet Earth, So, okay, let's move on. The Greeks. The Greeks believed that people died and ended up in Hades, a gray and misty place where the Lord of the Dead ruled. Others believed in a paradise-like place called it Olympic Pantheon on Mount Olympus, where gods such as Zeus lived and decided the fate of humanity. The people who lived a good life and were constantly in the minds of the living enjoyed sunny pleasures, and those forgotten wandered eternally in the bleakness of Hades, while the wicked fell into dark pits called Tartarus. So, although the gods decided every fate of every individual on earth, someone could control his fate through divination and sacrifices to them. So that's kind of interesting, right? I really like that it's split into 3, and that actually, like, if you were loved, because I really believe this as far as that other, the Jewish concept that we were just talking about as far as your legacy, like, you live on in the hearts of others through the love they have for you. And so it's really interesting that they actually have a place for that, for those people, as a sort of, I want to say maybe a purgatory of sense, but not in a negative way. It's just not the darkest pits of hell or Tartarus, where the wicked go into the pits of this place. And then it's also not necessarily heaven, right? But that you can, but that you can. Oh, wait, did I get that right? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I was right. So, although the gods decide the fate of every individual on earth, some could control his fate through divination and sacrifices. So this we see as a running pattern of religions believing that you can, appease to the gods throughout life, just, outside of just who you are and what you do, to actually get into heaven. Okay. Islam. So we're going to move on to Islam, though very different from Christian practice, beliefs and doctrine. They do share a bit of history with Christianity. People believe that the Prophet Muhammad founded Islam in 622 AD in Mecca, despite growing up in the knowledge of Christian faith and practice. So, regardless of the famous belief that the men who follow closely in the faith will receive 72 virgins and women, just one man for each of them to do all sorts of things with on the other side, Muslims do believe in a good place called paradise and a bad place called hell. Those bound for paradise will experience peace before the resurrection, and those bound for hell will suffer in their graves. Okay. Buddhism, according to the Buddhists, life is a journey, whereas death is returning to earth. This is truly where I kind of come in. I kind of believe that we're living in hell on earth, and it's almost like our duty or the journey is to take whatever circumstances we've earned in our last life here, as a soul contract, to come back here and learn more. and to find and sort of scratch our way through hell back to the divine in this experience. Now, I don't know, maybe that's sort of bleak, but it sort of feels right to me, because I just don't understand how spending an eternity in hell. Now, if you're going to reincarnate because you're not learning and you're always in that and you never scratch your way back to God, to the love and to the light through this place we live in that's far, far from heaven, but creating our heaven on earth, right? Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. A little Belinda Carlisle for you. A little Mickey Mouse style. So anyway, it's like, do we create that? It's something that we create within ourselves, within our hearts, within our reality. And then when we come back the next time, I sort of feel like there's this idea that your energetic vibration is as you leave your body. So once we're into the ethers and in that zero state of self, I don't know if we can really raise or lower our vibration. And then that should, basically dictates how, we're reborn. We're reborn that, the same as which we left to some degree, but with a different plan to learn and soul path. So, yeah, I just find it super interesting. So, most of the religions that believe in reincarnation have a similar idea of where they believe an individual ends up after this life, despite slight variations concerning how someone gets to the next reincarnation or achieves nirvana. According to Buddhism, a Buddha is someone who has attained a state of enlightenment, is the only one who ever gets to enter nirvana, the highest state of perfect peace and happiness where one's individual suffering and desires do not exist. Those who fail to achieve nirvana are reborn immediately after their death, where they receive another body. So for me, this is probably the closest to what I think is real. And there are many, and we're going to go over reincarnation more clearly tomorrow, but there are many, different religious and spiritual values that actually believe that, reincarnation exists. And it's, from the research I did, it was even a Christian belief until, a certain king came in and said, how can we control these people with this idea? So even Jesus may have believed in that. And it would make sense, it actually does make sense when you think about the story we're hearing now, the current, in my opinion, grossly edited version of his word. It kind of fills in some of the missing pieces, right? So anyway, Hinduism, the approximately 900 million Hindus believe in a supreme god called Brahman, who manifests himself through many other gods and goddesses. Some of the standard practices in Hindu include yoga, devotion to God, meditation, pilgrimage to holy cities, and several other practices. Hindus do not believe in heaven or hell. Their life after death system of belief is that of reincarnation again. So they believe that when someone dies, he or she is born into a different body largely determined by his or her previous life. So again, this kind of aligns, I'm somewhere riding between the Native Americans, the Egyptians, which we'll talk about later, of course, and, the Hindus. Like they're all these ancient, it seems like many of the ancient practices, the ones that are thousands of years old, really do believe in reincarnation. Okay, so that's one of the reasons I chose to do that as a topic, beyond my own belief. Now, we're going to start getting to some weirder ones that I've not heard of. Some of them I have, but there's a few that are pretty interesting. So, Epicureanism is approximately 300 years older than Christianity and is unclear, but it is the number of believers in Greece and other parts of the world today, but it seems like it is sort of coming from that aspect, Greek history. Unlike most other religions on the planet, Epicureanism believes in many gods, but none of them even care what we're doing. They're like, yeah, whatever, you guys, this is boring. It's like, it's like Jerry Springer. They're like, I guess maybe it's entertaining for a minute, but, boring. And so the believers here think that everything, including their gods and souls, are made up of atoms. So this, again, refers back to that energy concept. Furthermore, according to Epicureanism, there is no afterlife, so nothing like reincarnation, heaven, or hell exists. When an individual dies, the believers here believe that the soul just dissolves and that is the end of them. So it's almost, that's pretty interesting. A lot of people, I think, believe that, or, it's what's logical to people. And so another one everyone is familiar with, a Chinese traditional religion, the yin and yang, is a popular concept of faithful followers of this religion. They hold strong to it, and it include they hold strong to their religion, including their mythological deities and gods. The yin is negative, dark, and feminine, while the yang is positive, bright, and masculine. The interaction of the two greatly influence the destiny of all things. Those who live according to the Chinese traditional religion believe in a peaceful life after death, one that an individual can attain through performing specific rituals and showing great honor to their ancestors. Upon death, the god Qing Wang determines whether someone's spirit is virtuous enough to go and to dwell with the immortals in Buddhist paradises, or to a hell followed by an immediate rebirth into their next reincarnation. So once again, even though it's considered like the Chinese traditional practice, we are talking again of an ancient belief system that has a basis in reincarnation. But it's not necessarily what happens. You don't have to achieve that state of perfection in order to go into the paradise. It says if you just have enough virtue, then you are allowed to go dwell with the immortals in these paradises. So Jainism, the followers of Jainism, approximately 4 million, believe in the existence of many gods and reincarnation until liberation, a liberation that is achieved through the avoidance of bad karma. So tomorrow, reincarnation and karma are going to go together, and causing no harm. People who do not achieve liberation continue in the cycle of rebirth, and some might even have to go through 8 hells before a rebirth. So a little schooling of hells, not infinite, but you have to kind of make it through the 8 levels of hell before you even get the privilege of being reborn into this one. The 8 hells get colder at every stage, and the soul passes through a lot of torture before getting another opportunity for rebirth and another chance to reach liberation. Although it may take a very long time, the liberated souls get a place among the gods. So this does seem to be, regardless of reincarnation or not, there seems to be the idea that once we achieve a certain level of vibration, so in my mind, it's like we're just here to raise our vibration and continue to get, more and more aligned with the divine energy, with the creative energy that created everything. And then, once we achieve that, we naturally become part of it, right? So that would just be a natural thing. So the Baha'i is a religion made up of approximately 7 million people. The believers here consider that the soul of the human being is eternal and good, and it is the work of every individual to draw closer to God. Unlike most other religions that have their own specific God, the Baha'i believe in one God who has shown himself through all other religions in the world. Now, I love this. This actually really vibes with me, and I really do think this is logical. So, according to the Baha'i followers, heaven and hell do not exist. The two are states of being either close to or far from God. Like, this is what I'm jamming on. That's exactly what I was just talking about. The Baha'i believe that most other religious groups are mistaken when they interpret heaven and hell to be physical places as opposed to seeing them as symbolic representations of distance from God. Like, I totally believe in this. I think that is exactly logical in my opinion. And, because to me, I'm not a very competitive person. I'm not trying to compete. I don't think we really need to be like telling each other we're wrong about things. You know, I mean, it's like to each his own. And I don't feel that God, you know, as such a divine being would be on that tip either. So I really like this idea from the Baha'i. So, Rastafari. I don't know. I myself, you know, I did a little bit of, you know, exploration in this religion as well. Rastafarianism is a relatively new religion that is growing very fast, especially among communities that embrace the use of marijuana. And you can identify a faithful by the colors he or she wears and how he or she takes care of her hair, his or her hair, dreadlocks. So, Rastafarianism has its roots in Jamaica, and the movement dates back to the 1930s. And according to this religion, the once emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, was their God incarnate, and a faith that did not even shake when he died in 1975. According to some Rasta, all the believers will experience immortality through the process of reincarnation, and they believe in heaven as getting back to the Garden of Eden, which according to them is in Africa. Yeah, I think it is in Africa, or perhaps, you know, Iraq. Between Iraq and Africa is the two, you know, sort of beliefs as the cradle of humanity, you know, like, so that kind of goes back to the Sumerians. And I know that in the Sumerian history, they actually called all of Earth Eden, you know, for a while, which I thought was awesome because I have two daughters, Eden and Gaia. And, you know, for them to both have the meaning of Earth, they're both actually Earth signs, which did not inspire their names. But anyhow, now we'll move on to Aztecs. When most people think of the Aztecs and their religion, the images that come to mind are those of people offering up their children as human sacrifices to appease their gods. This religion had numerous festivals dictated by the Aztec calendar, and the people believed in numerous gods and goddesses. The Aztecs believed that when their own died, they would enter into any one of the three places they believed they would spend their afterlife. Mictlan, I don't know, you guys. Tlalocan, or the sun. Women who lost their lives, now this part I thought was pretty interesting. Women who lost their lives during childbirth and fallen warriors were believed to transform into hummingbirds. Those who drowned were believed to go to Tlalocan, and those who died from horrible causes ended up in Mictlan. Excuse me if I didn't pronounce those right, I'm sorry. So, onward. Okay, so I actually ended up adding a few. So we actually have about 21 to go through. I forgot that I ended up adding to this. I thought it was 16, so sorry about that. Anyhow, so this one, I really feel like, not this one, the next one. So Zoroastrianism is a belief in which people believe in a god called Ahura Mazda and an evil god called Angra Mainyu, which is almost as strong as their god. The followers of Zoroastrianism believe that when a person dies, he or she can enter a heavenly place or hell, depending on how someone led his or her life. So this is pretty much the bottom line. The bottom line is, no matter what goes down, it seems to be based on who you are and whether you are, you know, based out of love or, you know, hate, and whether you hurt, you know, harm or help each other and self and earth and, you know, all of that. Seems to have a great effect on what happens to us once we pass on. So everyone has to cross to the other side using the Chinvat Bridge. People who lived a good life pass that bridge with ease, since to them it is broad, but for sinners, the bridge turns on its side and becomes as narrow as a sharp razor, and a shocking woman torments them to fall into purgatory. So, whoa. So like some crazy lady is running up the razor bridge that's on its side, yelling at you till you fall. That's pretty creative, I suppose. So, okay, this one. Juche. And I thought that sounded like the way a little kid says juice, but Juche is the newest religion on this list. Okay. And the ideology behind it makes it a socio-political organization as well as a religion. Jewish adherents worship Kim Il-sung, North Korea's first dictator, who also rules as the eternal president. Kim Il-sung's son, Kim Jong-il, who ruled as his father's surrogate, and Kim Jong-soko, the wife of Kim Il-sung. Juche was fashioned after Christianity, with these people representing that religion's trinity, positions held by God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. In Christianity, Juche followers believe that when they die, they go to be with their dictator president forever. So, narcissist much? Anyhow, I think this is a little extra, and different than Rastafari, because, that was like created not by the dictator himself, but by his followers who feel as though he, was a deity. So that's a little different, and this one I just thought was a little bit comical. I've never heard of it, and excuse me if I'm offending anyone by saying it's comical. It just kind of is. It's kind of weird how actually intense and these dictators in these communist countries are, and this just takes it to a whole new level. So anyhow, we'll move on. With that being said, Sikhism is one of the most popular religions in India. I love this. If you've ever met Sikh people, they are amazing. They're so cute and childlike and bright and beautiful, and I just really love the Sikh nation. But Sikhism is one of the most popular religions in India, with approximately 25 million followers. Lucky planet Earth, because, hey, they're good ones. Guru Nanak founded Sikhism in 1500 AD, a religion that has grown to the point of having over 500,000 followers living outside of India even. According to the beliefs and practices of the Sikh, a person's actions determine whether his or her soul is destined for great agony and pain in the underworld, or end up merging with God in the spiritual world. A soul caught in the cycle of reincarnation can overcome it through meditating on the Sikh god Ik Onkar, overcoming self, and becoming a saint soldier fighting for good. So cute. I love it. It's so sweet. And I mean, again, it's like, I believe that idea of that, whatever heaven is, it's becoming one with God, not necessarily just, hanging out up there with him and Jimi Hendrix. So, yeah, I mean, and all your fam. So, I think it's like we all become this unified. And that's why I think reincarnation actually makes sense, because, I mean, it's probably very few people who can come to Earth and actually take from a newborn vibrational energy. So, energy, expands and contracts and transmutes, but cannot die, right? So as we raise in vibration, each time we exit the body, that dictates how we're born in and what we are come back to learn based on whatever holes, what we haven't learned yet, or how our vibration can expand. And once we become that ultimate expansion and that highest of vibrations, again, we naturally become one with God as we exit the body. That's my vibe. So there are some doctrines. Okay, here we go. Egypt. Okay, so like I said before, if I could, I would be totally mummified. I love the idea of it. And like, you see these mummies that are thousands of years old and their hair is still like braided. It's barely even different. You can still see the tattoos on their bodies. I mean, they could still study their DNA and their, what they may have passed from. I mean, I just think it's literally amazing for historical value. But there are three basic, ideologies in the Egyptian belief system. They believed in an underworld, the Duat, that had only one entrance, and it could be reached by traveling through the tomb of the deceased. They believed in eternal life, and they did believe in a rebirth of the soul as well. According to the beliefs of the ancients, the soul of the dead was presented to a prominent god, Osiris, and Osiris was responsible for determining the virtue of the deceased soul and grants those deemed deserving a peaceful afterlife. Now, they did have, the a Book of the Dead, which the Tibetans did as well, which again kind of aligns like with the Hopi chief talking to me about the Tibetan and the Egyptian correlation to their own oral history and to their own history. So this book, the Book of the Dead, is a collection of both coffin and pyramid spells. They were important for the Egyptians as they offered advice, protection, and knowledge to the dead as they journeyed through the netherworld. So then there's also the Book of the Netherworlds. These books contain many texts that provided the deceased with a description of the underworld and served as a guide to help the dead during their final journey. The texts inside those books focused on the second half of the sun god's journey, and some of those books were the Amduat, the Book of Gates, the Book of Caverns, and the Book of the Earth. So, of course, they believed that, in mummification. They thought that Ra would reawaken after they completed their journey through the underworld. Therefore, which is Ra is the sun god, they prepared a process through which the body was dismembered, and wrapped in bandages to safeguard it if the soul decided to return. It was a tradition for the majority of the ancient Egyptians to leave offerings next to the bodies of their dead to show their affection to the gods, and they believed that even after the death of someone, his spirit would live, as it is, according to them, a separate entity. Now, I believe this fully. I mean, and of course, love me some Egyptians and Egyptian lore, but judging of the dead was the process through which the ancient Egyptian gods have the authority to judge the worthiness of the soul of the deceased. So once again, it's going to be based out of your deeds in life. This process was the most important part of the journey into the afterlife according to the Egyptians. After finishing this judgment, souls arrive at the Hall of Ma'at, where their purity would be a determining factor as to whether they would be allowed to enter the kingdom of Osiris. So Ma'at is actually related to Thoth, one of my faves. And so, they are, a sort of masculine, feminine, brother, sister kind of vibe in the underworld, right? So, I think, those sort of, takes you, into the underworld as a guide into the underworld. And then Ma'at is weighing your heart against a feather. And in order to enter the hall in the kingdom of Osiris, you must have a heart that weighs less than a feather. So that's pretty good metaphor. The importance of this process shows that if the dead can determine the judge's names, or Ren, and establish that they were pure. When they proved that they were sinless, Anubis administrates a test to see the weight of the dead's heart against the feather of Ma'at. So it's Anubis and Ma'at. Thoth was the one, here we go, who was responsible for recording the results and presenting them to Osiris. He admitted them to Sekhet, and, then they would carry on. So I'm assuming that, or my thought or my understanding is that if you did not pass, then you would be reborn to learn more and to attempt to become a more pure, vibration to enter, heaven. So anyhow, there's just a really quick one here, a little quick blurb about the beliefs and rebirth. Beliefs about rebirth and reincarnation are widespread between modern and traditional tribes. So we're talking Native American tribes. The deceased can return as an animal, person, or as a ghost. The Hopi tribe of Arizona believes the deceased return as ghosts or kachinas. The kachinas are messengers that bring prosperity and necessities like rain to the tribe. So, yeah, I find this to be a super interesting idea, concepts. There's just so many different beliefs in how to be a good person to all of these different belief systems. And like I said, 4,000, 4,000, like, freaking religions on earth. I mean, there's so many. There's like one I remember when Eden passed away. I was really researching this, and I found this like Asian culture who actually brings the deceased into their living room and gives them meals and, you know, brushes their hair and all of this in the living room for a period of time. I want to say it was like a year or something. And there's a whole documentary. You can look it up on YouTube, I believe. There's just a whole documentary about these people, and I just found it super, super fascinating, although quite macabre and maybe intense as well, you know what I mean? So anyhow, we're running long here, so I am going to jump, but I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you found it, you know, as kind of fun and educational as I did, and because of the fact that I found it to be such a common concept that, you know, reincarnation is a belief system amongst, you know, just so many religions. Join us on the next episode for reincarnation and karma. So we're going to kind of talk about that idea of your deeds and how that affects what happens to your soul when you leave this body. And so, alrighty, thank you so much. Once again, I'm so grateful for you being here. And I don't think I said it. It was the first time on my last, you know, episode. But all we can do is show to grow and learn and glow, you know, as human beings. And glowing is raising our energy, right? Raising the vibration, information, and knowledge, you know, can really help to do that and to raise your vibration. So glowing, now that we've talked about energy and vibration, when I say glow, it's really just, you know, expanding your energy body, raising up your energy to a more divine vibration. And we are all beings of divinity, true that. It's just about choosing to express it in this lifetime. So with that being said, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate all of you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.